Hi, and welcome to Partners in Progress, a couples podcast about love, life, and well-being in your 20s with me, Eloise.
And me, Sammy.
In this podcast, we'll be discussing topics like relationships, health, well-being, spirituality, and just life. From tips and tricks to failures and falls, all while sharing our story as we try to figure out building and growing a life together in the chaos of modern-day society. We'll be coming to you every Sunday with our shares and invite some guests to share their experiences too. So grab a blanket, a cuppa, and settle in to Partners in Progress. Hello and welcome back to Partners in Progress. We are fully alive this time. Last week, obviously, I was coming out of illness, and Sam, you also just started. So how are you doing this week?
Yes, I'm doing better now, thank you. So it was literally right after we recorded the podcast last week, I started feeling a bit rough. I think it was my throat started feeling bad right after we finished recording, and I was like, oh, that's fine, probably. Lo and behold, it was not. So yes, felt a bit rough up until Saturday, and then I was like, oh, I feel fine. I can go back to doing normal things straight away, which is always a good idea. It never goes wrong. But yeah, so that evening I reached a point like sort of 8 o'clock or something, and I was like, oh gosh, I need to lie down, or I'm just gonna pass out right here on the sofa. And yeah, from there felt pretty ill up until Tuesday. I'd say lots of bed rest, lots of water and everything. And then yeah, from there I've been pretty much okay. But yeah, I think in that time when I've been like lying in bed and my body's refusing to do anything, my brain's feeling better, I've been kind of reflecting a bit on everything we were talking about in the podcast last week, kind of about like the next step in life.
Yeah.
As I think after our engagement and everything, it's kind of not settled down, but I feel like I've got used to us being engaged now, and which is really nice. And I think it's reached the point where you're like, oh, actually start thinking about the wedding or whatever else we're doing, which is very exciting in some ways, until you look at the prices of things, and then it becomes less exciting. No, but yeah, I think I'm also just pondering about like what's the right next big step for us to truly focus on. As I think, like we talked about last time, there's not really a right option, but I'm not going to rehash last week entirely. That's just where my mind's at the moment, really. But how are you doing after not feeling very well last week and getting better?
Oh, yeah, well, I've been all right. It's been like kind of busy, and it's just been like sucks to like kind of have you be poorly, because obviously it's not fun when like someone in the house is like poorly, and you just want like you want you to get better and things, and I definitely saw you like kind of have that experience of feeling better a little bit and then being like ready to do loads of things, and then you did all the things and
Just crashed
just
straight
crashed
afterwards.
And I know it's tricky, isn't it, like when you kind of start to feel better and then you kind of just want, because your brain is like back to its kind of baseline. I feel like sometimes when you're like in the worst of like illness, you're just all you can think about is being ill. Like you just don't have the brain capacity for anything else, do you?
Yeah, I think I definitely had that at the point when like both my nostrils were blocked and my throat hurt, and it's just like existence is pain.
Yeah.
But I think once you get past that point, and it's like you just everything feels fuzzy, but your brain is like working enough to think about things and not just like melt to mush.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
I feel like that can be like a time when overthinking becomes so loud because your body is still physically recovering and you can't physically do much, but because your brain is kind of getting back to normal, I feel like you just start thinking about everything, don't you? And just
yeah.
overthink everything and kind of just so it was really poor timing in that obviously we had that episode talking about like, what's next? And you were kind of thinking a little bit about it, but not like as much as I have been, and then you kind of have caught up.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
From
I
the
think I'm
sounds
there
of
now.
things.
I think with you were pulling ahead at the beginning, if this was a metaphorical race, and I have managed to speed up in the last few days, just purely from having the time and nothing else to think about or really focus on, while being ill.
Yeah,
But
I think like I've definitely, and I feel like I'm the same as like last week. Like I feel I'm still thinking about things a ton, which I mean, I think is pretty normal. Obviously, I feel like work can help because the second I'm at work, like all I'm thinking about was work. I really realized that on Saturday because my mum came up on Saturday for like Mother's Day weekend.
Yeah.
And like you both walked me to work and stuff, but it literally like the second I got onto session, like it kind of just left my brain that my mum was here. It left my brain that like, life stuff. All I was just thinking about was work.
Yeah.
And I think that makes kind of like it gives a nice relief to it. But because I don't work like as many hours as you do, I feel like that's why I can often go a bit quicker and further forward with kind of thinking about things. Do you feel like you can switch off from life things at work, or do you feel like, because obviously you work from home, so it's a bit different for you, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I think it's like it depends what I'm doing and how much I'm focusing on stuff. Because I think, again, with what I do, which I think we'll talk about a bit later, but is software engineering. That involves a lot of kind of coding and thinking about stuff at a high level. So when I'm really in the midst of that or in meetings talking about stuff, that is kind of all you can focus on. And if you get in that like flow state of like programming and then you're just going
Yeah.
through stuff and then random things are popping up and you're like, why the hell is nothing working? That is very much all you can focus on. And sometimes to like the extent where you focus on that outside of work, not even like consciously thinking about it, but like I've had it so many times where you have like a bug that's really confusing you and you'll figure it out at like 2 a.m. and I'll have to write a note on my phone or something so to remember it and then just let it drop out of my head. But in the other way, if you haven't got like as much of it, because it's not all that, I think I definitely do sort of think about it more at work than you probably do. And again, with
Yeah.
having, I think what not pulls me out of it, but like kind of having breaks at lunch and then being with you, it brings me back into the home stuff because it's like I'm away from my laptop and again, as long as there's not anything super urgent popping up, like that time is just for us.
Yeah.
So I think that's what then pulls me back into house stuff and thinking like, oh, okay, what are we going to try and focus on this evening? What are we going to try and do then? But I think, yeah, you definitely have more time to think about it, I think, in the sense of outside of like working and stuff. And I think that does lead to you then thinking and planning a lot of the stuff out more, at least to begin with, just because of how the time is split to a certain extent, but also how your brain is, I think.
Yeah, I do have such like I have such a, how people like my dad always used to say there's like thinkers and doers, and I'm such a thinker, but I feel like I'm like the biggest thinker ever. Like I just constantly am thinking about things and like the way of like kind of like planning things out and thinking of all the options. And we always talk about, don't we, that I'm always thinking about like the most efficient way of doing something, like
Yeah.
what's going to be the most effective, like no matter what it is, whether it's like putting on a wash or it's planning a wedding. Like I'm just like,
Yeah.
what's the most efficient like order of things to do it? And I just, yeah. But I think it's good that you like the way you use your phone for like notes. I think is a really good, how you just mentioned a bit ago about when you have a thought come up outside of work and you just drop it into your notes and then forget about it,
Yeah.
or like try to forget about it. And you have like, you are the man of to-do lists.
Yeah. I mean, if anyone was to look at my notes app, they'd probably think, why does he have so many lists? The answer is because I forget I have a list sometimes and I just create a new one. But no, I do try and keep them consistent and just also keep them separate. Like at any given time, I've probably got a list of like a shopping list, what I need to do on the weekend list, and just a other list of like, it doesn't fit into any other category.
Such a Capricorn.
Yeah, I think so. No, but I think that's one way it kind of helps me feel like I'm in control of things sometimes. Sometimes it can have the opposite effect if the list is really long and then I feel overwhelmed. But
Yeah.
I feel like I always had a funny thing with going to sleep when I was younger, where it's like if I had anything that popped into my head while I was going to sleep that I felt like even might be remotely important, I couldn't actually get to sleep unless I'd written it down in case I forgot about it. Most of the time I'd look at the next morning, it's like, why the hell did I write this down? Like, it's not important whatsoever. So it's not as much now, but I think it's things if I'm like, oh, this actually is important, I don't want to forget this, I'll just
Yeah.
write it down. or I'll just go and do it sometimes if it's in the house. Like I remember one night I couldn't get to sleep and I was like, oh, I need to get bread out of the freezer for tomorrow. So I just went downstairs at like 1 a.m. and got bread out the freezer, and I was like, job done. And I just went back to bed.
I remember like the next day it being like, I think I mentioned like, oh no, we didn't get bread out.
I was like,
and
don't
then
worry.
You were like, I did it in the early hours this morning.
I've got it covered.
what?
Yeah. I think this was, I don't do that all the time. I think that was a bit of a rare circumstance because I remember that was the day before we went to the Peak District. So I think my mind was a bit spinning on the whole holiday and then proposal. So I think that was
That's
more
fair.
reasonable.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was quite funny when I woke up and I was like, don't worry.
I got the bread.
Yeah.
The bread is secured.
It is sitting in the cupboard, nicely defrosted. But yeah, I guess that kind of feelings of, I was going to say feelings of spiraling, that sounds dramatic. The feelings of trying to get control in our lives in various ways can kind of relate to what I guess the main topic we'd kind of talked about for this episode.
Yeah, I think because obviously it came up at the gym, didn't it? About like having so we've seen, we've had
rewind.
We've had like I've done a few gym sessions and you've had like one gym session.
For illnesses reasons.
Yeah, sorry, that made it sound really bad.
So I've been going to the gym all the time. You went once and were like, oh, that's enough for me. It's just because
it's relevant to the
no, it is, but
the top. Yeah,
I just want to give the context.
Yeah, but with the gym, you were feeling like quite a lot of imposter syndrome, and I feel like this is something that comes up a lot for everyone. I feel like everyone gets a bit of imposter syndrome, but you definitely felt that at the gym, didn't you?
Yeah, I think it was one of those where I'm not the best at existing in an environment if I don't feel like I'm at least mostly comfortable in it. And for a man who has not been in a gym since he was probably like 13, 14. It's not somewhere I'm very used to being, and also as someone who's a fairly skinny person as well. I think it like those things are things that make me feel like I don't necessarily fully belong there. But I can see you shaking your head. I think I saw you shake your head.
Yeah.
But I'll finish my thought and then you
can
not disagree. You can say other things. But yeah, so the first time we were in there, I think I was just feeling a bit like, I don't know what I'm doing. All these other people seem very physically fit and they know what they're doing. And I'm just here like, how do I get the treadmill up to reasonable speed? But I think that because of that, there was part of me that was like, oh, I just want to kind of go. But I was trying to fight it. And I think in the end that I did. And I definitely felt better for going. And I'm very much looking forward to going again. As I'm now almost fully better, because I didn't want to chance it when I wasn't feeling 100% and just get worse again. So yes, that was kind of what inspired us thinking about this a bit, because we talked about it on the way back really as well. And I think it was, I realized it a bit in the moment, but I didn't fully clock it until I was actually talking about it, and I was like, oh, that's actually what I'm feeling in words rather than just this sort of thing that you can't really describe.
Yeah, I think like I remember when we were in the gym, and for me, like, I certainly am not like, I don't look like, neither of us look like, muscly people. Like, that's obviously, like, let's go to the gym. But it's because the gym is, like, one of the areas that I, like, actually work at. So, like, I literally work in that gym once a week. Just doing, like, a session for teenagers, like, doing a supervised gym session. So, like, of course, for me, I was able to feel a lot more comfortable from the get-go, but I noticed, like, because I feel like we just pick up on these things. Obviously, we live together and have been together for a while now, so, like, I can sense when there's, like, something amiss, and I remember just feeling like you were, like, I didn't know what it was. I think I wasn't completely sure, like, I thought, it's easy to kind of go into like defensive mode and be like, oh my gosh, have I upset him? Is he like mad? Have I just dragged him into this and he doesn't want to do it? But like I knew that there was something going on, but not necessarily what it was. So we just had that conversation, and that was when you kind of articulated like that imposter syndrome you're feeling.
Yeah. And I think it's something I get in like various places if I'm not that comfortable, but I think it's most of the time you're not there for like that long, so it doesn't really matter. But I think because you're, again, at the gym, we were there for like an hour or so, so I think it's like you kind of feel it settle in a bit.
Yeah, but I think it's so normal. Like, even
Yeah.
I felt it a little bit like being in the gym and, you know, because it was our first session and I haven't really gymmed much in my life. Like I did a fair bit during university, but not ever like very seriously or regularly. I just went kind of when I wanted, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But like I think the whole point obviously being like going to a gym is it's just an outlet of exercise, isn't it? And the reason that we are going to the gym is to make healthier choices for our lives now and for our future. We're not doing it for like aesthetic reasons or for any kind of other reason than that it's a way of us getting exercise in that's going to help us
It
commit
is.
and regularly do it. And I feel like the gym especially can be a very personal space because it is somewhere you're going that like you're choosing to go to, and you don't have to be there. Almost it feels like that it just, you're putting yourself out there a bit more, aren't you?
Yeah, and I think it is like, I mean, it is a spot where you're not always going to look your best or be your best because you're going to be sweaty, you're going to be doing
Yeah.
things that are like physically demanding. So I think it's not like if you go out to like a nice restaurant, as I say, that you can dress up and present a version of yourself. It's a very raw version of who you are, I think, if
Mm.
you're in there.
Yeah, and it's like the one place where everyone is choosing to improve themselves in some way. And there's
Yeah,
not really many environments that you come across in your life where like in your day-to-day life that is the case. And so it is very, there's almost like this kind of shared experience that's going on even though everyone's kind of in their own bubbles. And I think that was kind of what I was speaking about to you when you mentioned about this imposter syndrome. I was just kind of saying how like most people in there, if not, well, every person in there is firstly going to be completely focused on themselves because that's like a guarantee, isn't it? If you're in a gym, you're focused on yourself. Like that's the
yeah,
only reason to be in the gym.
yeah. You're not just going to be going around judging everyone else's form. And I mean, if you are, then that's a bigger issue on you
Yeah,
than anyone else. So
exactly. And if anything, I feel like a lot of people that, regularly go to the gym are probably going to feel happy that more people are going to the gym because gym can become such a big part of people's lives. So when other people do that, they're like, yeah, you're doing gym too, great, kind of thing.
yeah, it's not like people are going there to put others down and
No,
anything
exactly.
like that. So yeah, but I think after talking about that, I think it was nice to be able to put it into words and feel that way about it. But I think it did get me thinking about how, if there's any other ways I felt it in my life and any
Mm,
other kind of avenues. And I was kind of wanted to talk about that a bit with you as well, because I think
yeah.
we talked about it briefly, obviously for the gym, but not really anywhere else. So,
No.
I mean, the other one that I feel like comes up fairly obviously off the back of it is in work. I feel like
Mm,
that's something that, at least from what I've read and spoken to people about, it seems like it comes up quite often, especially people, well, not especially people our age, but I feel like people at any level can.
mm.
But yeah, so I wanted to ask you to begin with. Do you feel like you have that at all with what
It,
you do?
in terms of work, I don't think I do it well because I think my role, like, kind of suit because I'm not like in a managerial or like lead position.
Mm,
I don't really feel it too much in the workplace because I'm like the lowest staff member above like volunteers.
right,
So like for me, I can always like divert to that. There's certainly like, I'm working with people that have decades of experience. So I have like the awareness that I'm not, as skilled and as experienced as them, but then that I don't really feel like an imposter there. I think because I love it and because there isn't too much pressure on me in the workplace that I feel like that's why I can kind of feel it. But I do feel it um when I think about things like my health, for
yeah.
example. So I can talk about that now unless you want to talk about your.
No, you could talk about that first.
So yeah, obviously I've mentioned about before how January of last year I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome. And since that time I have felt imposter syndrome, because as it was like over a year ago, a year and a half almost.
A year and a bit, yeah.
God. And it's been a very weird journey for me because I'm definitely mild. Like it affects my day-to-day life in terms of I wouldn't necessarily be able to manage a full-time job without that being my whole life. And there are certain kind of situations that I struggle and need assistance with in terms of if it's kind of like standing in one spot for a kind of long period of time, like waiting in a queue or something, that can really make me feel like lightheaded and dizzy. And just if I kind of like go through things at the same pace and not take any rest breaks in between, I definitely like start feeling symptoms arise, and that's obviously why I got poorly like after we were away, because we'd done a lot more than usual activity, and my reaction, like my body had a reaction and crashed, which is when I get the cold and flu symptoms. Of course I don't actually know if that's like a crash or it's that I'm more tired, so my immune system is weaker, so I catch something and then you catch it after me. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what. But to be honest, it doesn't really matter what the cause is. It's the reality of what happens anyway. But I really feel it because chronic fatigue syndrome is, firstly, it's a diagnosis that they give you. There's not like a straight test for it. It's out of process of elimination. So it already makes it a bit like you don't have like a set test that said, yep, you have chronic fatigue.
Yeah.
It's more like, yep, you don't pass any of these criteria, so you have chronic fatigue.
Yeah, it's more like you don't tick any of the other boxes neatly, so I guess it's likely this then. But
yeah, and so because of that, coupled with the fact that there are so many different levels of severity within chronic fatigue syndrome, in terms of there can be people that are bedbound, that need wheelchairs, that can't work at all, cut to the other side where people are managing full-time work and a life and are dealing with that just with kind of an awareness and certain adjustments made.
Yeah.
So because it's so varied and because I'm on the milder side of things, it's really easy for me to not feel like I am chronically ill, especially as the people in my life are used to seeing me be a version of myself. And so when I'm around people and they don't really, they're used to a different version of me, that now I'm like saying that I'm chronically ill and I need this adjustment, I need this amendment kind of thing. It makes me feel like I'm making it up almost, like I'm just like being like dramatic. And because people have, and because of the work I do as well, like my job is a fairly active job, but the difference is I am active for a few hours rather than a full day of work. So I'm not in a school 9 to 5. I am on a session for 3 hours.
Yeah.
Which is perfect for me because I can manage that well. And again, even within that, I make adjustments in terms of I will alternate between active and sedentary kind of activities. But yeah, I just feel a lot of imposter syndrome for it. Like I'm not ill enough to have chronic fatigue, and that I don't belong to that group because I can function to a decent level.
Yeah.
So that's like the biggest way like imposter syndrome I think comes up in my life.
Yeah. It's interesting, and I think, again, I know we've talked about it quite a few times, especially sort of after you got the diagnosis and sort of over the last year or so. But I think it's an odd situation when it's like you say, when you don't feel ill enough to classify yourself as it. But I think it is still like valid to make those adjustments, and I think you're doing the right amount for you, and I think it's not easy to admit that, but I am very proud of you for doing that, and
thank you.
Making the adjustments that you need, because it's not always easy to advocate for yourself in the sense of like, this is what I need.
No.
Help.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of people with like chronic conditions can have that as well, because chronic conditions by their definition are obviously like conditions that take place over a longer period of time and they fluctuate. Like there's very few people that will define their chronic condition as like stable and the same all the time. That's what makes it chronic, is it always comes up. There are certain symptoms that are always there, like certain, like people could be like in pain all the time, or for me, I am tired all the time. That's my baseline, is a certain level of tiredness. But because chronic conditions are so changeable and go through so many different kind of waves and ebbs and flows, I feel like there's a lot of us in the community of chronic conditions that feel that imposter syndrome, that feel, especially when you're doing like well. You know, like me recently, I've obviously, like I said, I've been going to the gym, and it's meant that today I have literally just rested most of the day because I've maxed out on my energy levels over the last 2 days by going to the gym. But I know it's helpful in the long run. But you know, and a lot of people that are normal functioning will do a full day's work and then go to the gym and then obviously make all their meals and do all the kind of mundane activities, and that just be their day. And that's the difference. Like that is not necessarily like I have repercussions from that action.
But I think that's another part of it, like when you say like, oh, you've been feeling better and things, it's like part of that comes from knowing how to manage it, I think, and making those adjustments, because I think that's been a whole learning process in its own right.
Sure.
But yeah, I think it's also good to be feeling better. But I do also understand how it can be like, oh, maybe I'm too well.
It makes it like you forget that you actually have this chronic condition. So you're like, oh, I could do everything. I'm normal functioning. It's great. And then you're like, oh,
you just hit like a wall with it, and you're like, never mind.
And you are right. Like, I think I am managing it better now. So just like taking breaks and kind of getting myself into like a rest state is more kind of part of my like routine, or just what I do naturally now. It's kind of become, what's it called, second nature?
Because I think I know, especially towards the beginning, it's kind of like you have to be really intentional with like, okay, I'm going to try and rest now, or like monitor these things. And it's like, obviously you still do that, but it's more of like when you, just like anything, if you get used to it and you can just keep at it, it just becomes something that you do rather than something you have to think about doing and then try and get to.
So hopefully I start feeling it less as time goes on. But that's how it kind of shows up for me in my life. I know you were talking about work.
Yeah, I can jump onto that one now. So I think, as I mentioned earlier, I think I work as a software engineer, so that involves a lot of coding, a lot of things around that, and building out various solutions, blah 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 blah.
I think you were saying that a lot of people kind of feel like in your field they feel the imposter syndrome, and it'd be good to know like what about it makes you feel that imposter syndrome, I suppose.
So I think for me it's just a career that has so many different things that you can know, and some people, everyone has different definitions of what you should know, but various points in your career and stuff. And it's like I mean, I can go super technical with it, but I won't. But there's so many different parts to being a software engineer, because I think a lot of people think, oh, you just sit there and code and then you make things and then they go out on websites, and that's like that's it. But
that is what I thought, to be fair.
But that's really not it, unfortunately. Well, not unfortunately. So on top of that, you've got what's known as like front end and back end. So you've got people who make the website, and then people who do all the stuff that makes the website kind of run and show all the information it needs to. And I mainly work on that back end side of things, just because I like it. It meshes well with the way my brain works. I look at front end code and it turns to mush a bit. But again, that's part of it. Is like there are people out there who are known as full stack developers who kind of know both, so they could do my job as well as someone else's. And there's so many different languages you can know, and then on top of that, you've got all these different frameworks for actually getting things deployed and released, and all the infrastructure that goes along with that. So I think to me, it always feels like you're never going to know everything. Like I'm sure there are a few people out there who do, because there are some real geniuses in this field, but they are not the average person in terms of who's doing this. Not that I'm saying I'm blatantly average, but
So I suppose in the same way that, like, for me, imposter syndrome with like my chronic condition is the fact that there's so many different ways you can experience a chronic condition, is in the same way that you can be a software engineer and that look so different depending on
Yeah.
what kind of subcategories within it you have learned.
Yeah, it's like what areas you focus on and things like that, because it's like you can look at any job application with the same title and each one could ask for wildly different experiences on them, and I feel like that kind of encapsulates it quite well, because especially after like graduating and looking at, or like leading up to graduating and looking at all the different job specs, they'd all be like, oh, we want you to have experience with this language and this framework, and it's, oh, we want you to have experience with a completely different one that kind of does the same thing, but like they're different enough that it wouldn't be easy to just transfer them over and stuff. So I think it's like whatever you do learn, there's going to be an alternative that you haven't.
Yeah.
So there's not like there's ever really like a right or wrong answer for anything. It's just I feel like you just got to be adaptable, and that's what I'm trying to learn, because I always feel like it's in my nature to be kind of like, oh, this thing works, I'm just going to stick with it forever. But I've definitely learned quite quickly that's not what makes a good software engineer. And I think especially when you're learning that new stuff and working with people who know it way, way better than you feel a bit like, I am but a small man who does not know how anything works. But you also get the opposite effect of like when you start getting to grips with it and just kind of get in a flow and go with it, and then you feel like, oh, I am the biggest genius in the world. And I feel like any kind of programmer can probably relate to those two extremes of like being the stupidest and the smartest person alive within the span of like 10 minutes, depending on how things are going.
Yeah.
So it's very much a roller coaster. And I think the whole rise of AI with coding is a whole different subject I won't get into now, but I think it can lead to people seeming to know more than they do, and then even more imposter syndrome, because there's like, oh, there's this omnipotent machine that will know more than I ever do, that can do certain parts of what I do really well. So it can, I know some people have the like, why even bother approach, but I'm not that negative with it. But it's interesting, and I think I try to deal with it, and I think it does help from like having spoken to people way more experienced than me about this sort of like feeling, and they're like, oh, it never goes away. It's like you always feel like you're learning something or don't fully know it, and you've just kind of got to figure it out. And that's kind of made me feel better about it, because it's like, as long as you can figure it out and seem like you know what you're talking about to a certain extent, that it is that fake it till you make it approach, I guess. That can help.
So you're learning kind of how to be adaptable as your way of kind of managing that imposter syndrome.
Yeah, and I think it's just also having an openness and willingness to learn, because I think as soon as you get closed-minded or think you know everything, that's when you're going to stagnate, and that's actually when you're going to fall behind with it. But I think as long as you're learning something new and you're at least trying, even if it's not great. Because I mean, again, it's like with some of the stuff I've done, I've been like trying to learn a new language and all that stuff in coding language, not actual language.
People are not going to know what language means.
But especially recently, I've been trying to learn that, and you'll make I've like made like changes, and I'm like, oh, that looks pretty good, and then it goes through, and then people review the code and come back with 10 different comments of like things to change or improve, and they're not being malicious, but there's always part of you that's like, oh, I see. But again, it's all part of learning, and I've done another one more recently, and I've only got like 2 or 3 comments. So again, it's like that process of learning, and just trying to have an open mind and just trying to like contribute, because it's better to try and fail with it than just like try and make it perfect and spend like weeks on one thing, so better to do it quickly and fail than any other alternative.
It sounds like you're like doing a lot to kind of like manage it and not kind of stay in that kind of like feeling of imposter syndrome, which I think is a really positive thing.
Yeah, because I think I had like a job before my current one where I think it was kind of getting to me just from the fact of like, I didn't really feel like I had too much to do, and that was the point where it was really worrying me, because it's the extent of like, oh, if I'm not actually like contributing something or improving really, then it's just very limiting in terms of like that's where I really was like, you can reach a point where you feel like, actually maybe I'm not where I should be, and again, where I am now, it's really given me the opportunity to just kind of take things and run with them, which is what I really like. But at that same time, there's always moments in that process where you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. Is this really the best way? And you've just kind of got to muddle through it. But yeah, I think, again, talk to me on a different day when I've not been doing anything well and it's all been going wrong, and I'll be like, I'm the worst programmer ever. Don't know what I'm doing. But yeah, I think it's try to just keep a positive mindset towards it, but it's always going to creep in here and there, I think. And by the sounds of it, speaking to people who are much higher up than me, it never goes away. So
it's your life ahead,
basically. Yeah,
but I think the way that you like manage and deal with that like changes and evolves, just like you saying it already is, you know, like from where you started to where you are now.
Yeah, no, exactly. But I think that's definitely the main area of my life that I feel like I have it, because I feel like in relationships with you and with like friends and family, I don't really kind of get it that much. I'm guessing you've kind of gone through your main one, but I don't know if you really get it in other areas or not.
I think like my health is the like main way that I feel it. That might just be, I think it can be difficult when you're feeling it strongly in one aspect of your life. It might quieten down where you feel it in others. So, and again, I think you're likely to encounter imposter syndrome if you put yourself in unfamiliar and like out of your comfort zone situations more often, which arguably we don't really do. You know, we're very routine and we have our kind of day-to-day lives.
Yeah, that's true.
So we don't get faced with it, but I'm sure that there are going to be countless situations going like in life that I or both of us will feel it in some way or another, but that's definitely like the main way I am now. What I do wonder and what is interesting is the shared kind of aspects of imposter syndrome, although mine is like chronic condition related and yours is work related, which are not, you know, super similar.
Not super overlapping.
The way in which they have come about are quite similar in terms of them being in situations where you are dealing with variation and less explicit rules and kind of like, you know, there's a lot of like grey area of where you land, and I'm wondering if that's like, I think imposter syndrome will come up primarily from situations that you are unfamiliar with, you know, like you had in the gym the other day, like stepping into somewhere you haven't really been much before, but there are other people that have been there a long time or that have, you know, been training for a while. I think that's a quite common experience of imposter syndrome, but I wonder if there are also aspects of that kind of grey area that causes imposter syndrome. Like, I wonder if it comes up from being in situations where there's a lot of like blurry lines, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does actually. And I think that's a really interesting point, because I'm like, I think that's, again, what I've read and heard from people who are like, who have been software engineers and then gone to other careers. They said that like sometimes they feel less imposter syndrome in their other ones once they're more established compared to software, just because it's like, if some career paths just do have more established goals of like, oh, I need to hit X amount of whatever in a month or something like that, and then you've got that goal, and if you do it, then great. But with software, it's all a bit more wishy-washy. Like, you have deadlines and stuff, but there's 100 ways you can code anything, and like 3 of them are good, so you've got to figure out what those are, you know. So I think there's definitely something to that, and I guess it kind of comes down to the two big ones we've been talking about, is either that or, like you said, I guess with the gym there aren't those big rules, but it is that just, I guess, if in a situation where you know there's an unfamiliar environment and there's people who just do know more than you, I think that it's not a more valid version of imposter syndrome, but I
think that's more likely to lead to imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Rather than like, I think there's a difference between like feeling uncomfortable or feeling a little bit of discomfort from unfamiliarity to that kind of feeling of imposter syndrome when you're faced with people that are arguably better in some way.
Yeah.
Even though they're not.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting, and it'd be interesting to know like if how we've described it is what other people have experienced with like imposter syndrome or not before. So let us know if if it's come up in your life and how you feel it. But with that, we will move on to the wellbeing segment. How have you? I feel like we spent the first half of this talking about how has this last week gone for you? Feeling good?
Been absolutely great. No, I mean it's ended well, I think.
What's been a highlight?
The highlight for me has been
Nintendo Switch.
I was going to say I've been talking about it a lot with you. But yeah, there was a Nintendo Switch 2 presentation on Wednesday, which was yesterday, and that was very exciting. Everything there looked really good, and then they announced the prices of things, and my excitement died down a little bit, but I'm still mostly very excited about it. So yes, I'll be getting that or pre-ordering that soon probably. And it comes out in June, which is way closer than I thought, but it kind of makes sense in retrospect.
That's true.
So yes, that's the main thing that's keeping me excited at the moment. Especially Mario Kart. Cannot wait.
Finally a new one.
I know, it's only been 11 years since the last one came out. But yes, how about you? What's been your highlight?
I think the fact that I have managed to go to the gym twice this week, I feel like it deserves a round of applause. Thank you.
I'm holding the mic with one hand. I'll tap on my chest.
like
if you want the visual, just one-handed. Imagine he's holding a podcast mic in the
other. But yeah, I was aiming for 3, but I realise now that might have been a bit unachievable because I have like maxed out my energy by going to the gym. Like on both days I've like used up my energy capacity basically. So if I had gone again today, then, and I know I will be using up my energy the next 2 days as well from work, so it's good. Need to hold my horses a little bit.
Yeah, you gotta kind of manage the expectations, because 2 is still really impressive. From going from like, well, I know you did sessions in the gym and things, but they're different from fully working out in the gym, I think. So
it's a really good start, and I'm hopeful that it will continue.
And I'll go with you again soon now that I'm better. So that'll be fun.
You will. And what is one thing you need from me or can do for yourself in the next week?
I think just looking to kind of slowly and steadily get back into doing more things in the evenings, and then kind of looking for making improvements to the house. I feel like, again, that's kind of dropped off because we've been ridiculously busy with stuff, and then you've been ill, and then I've been ill, and then we've seen people and everything. But it would be nice to kind of start getting back into it, especially now the clocks have gone in a direction
forward. Spring forward, fall back. That's even though fall is autumn.
Yeah, but spring forward, autumn back doesn't work as well.
It sounds like awesome. Autumn back.
Autumn's back, guys. That's really throwing me off.
Sorry.
So yeah, it'd be nice to get back into that sort of positive routine as well. But I think, again, part of that is I want to aim at least to go to the gym once next week. My expectations of myself are lower than yours are, I think. So you were like, yeah, I'm going to go 3 times a week. And be like, I'm going to go once.
That's only like 1 less. So
yeah, that's true. But
don't be too hard on yourself.
No.
I think you've got to start somewhere.
Yeah. And I think objectively I am less fit than you are at the moment. So
that's quite funny. I don't actually agree with that. But
that's ridiculous, considering your work is all physical.
Yeah, your life is more sat down than mine, I will say. But you do also like I literally just say no such thing.
No, I know.
But you walk me to and from work, and you walk around the house a bit. So but yeah, I mean that's like
weekly step count of 600.
That's why we're going to the gym, isn't it? Because it's a way that can fit into our lives. And I think I'm more hope, just as you were saying about wanting to do more like after work in the next week, because it's going to next week is the Easter holidays.
Yes.
So my session time is moved to in the daytime.
Yeah. That's
so
true.
I think I'm also kind of optimistic that we will be able to accomplish a bit more come the evenings. I do anticipate that because we've had all this sunshine and the sunshine's continuing, that we're just going to have a massive downpour at some point.
Yeah.
Because
not unfortunately for the plants.
April showers,
Yeah.
But I think we'll make the best of it in all situations, whatever it is. So yeah, I'm hoping that we'll get more done and just hopefully kind of manage some of this like overwhelming feelings I've been having would be wonderful.
Yeah.
Um,
But yeah, hopefully that just being able to do a bit more and making progress and things will help with that. Because I feel like that's what helps with mine. But again, I know our brains work differently.
yeah,
so,
just actioning a little bit helps. Isn't it? But yeah, with that, we will leave you. Have a wonderful weekend. And we are sending you all the love and warmth, and we will see you next time.
See you then.